Wow. We might need a session of Gossip Girl every chapel series. Puts it in a whole different perspective there. I'll return to the Samaritan woman shortly. We have had a wonderful week with many voices here in chapel, looking at the spiritually formative power of time, looking at time, and in different ways, and using the Christian year as one of our frameworks for that. And this image, Mark and I were just sitting here looking at that image of the one before that. Yeah, that one. And how it just draws us in. The church here just draws us in to the story of God and continues to form us as we enter into that day in and day out, year in and year out. If you remember that Bobby Gross, this is my way back to last Thursday, encouraged us that embracing God's story, so just that image of embracing, diving into, dwelling in, embracing God's story and following Jesus is to have the shape and purpose of our lives conformed to the shape and purpose of His. So as we spend time dwelling in that story of Jesus through the Christian year, we're transformed by the story because God is present in the story. God is always present and at work, whether our church follows the Christian year or not. Don't leave here discouraged that maybe you never knew about this lovely rhythm before. Instead, be encouraged that there may be ways you can introduce meaningful changes of rhythm into your personal times of worship, as well as for your church in time. Little baby steps, remember? You do baby steps in change. So thinking about that God is present and at work always, German theologian Karl Rahner, wrote that, but we have to say of the God whom we profess in Christ, that He is exactly where we are, and only there is God to be found. The God that we profess in Christ is exactly where we are, and only there is He to be found. God is here, right where we are, in real time. As believers, we have this deep sense of comfort knowing that God is, though timeless and eternal, in time with us right now. God is not unreachably transcendent, but here in this moment with us. And because God is in this moment, God can respond to our needs, our wants, our prayers. So in the text this morning that Gossip Girl so well told us about, the Samaritan woman tried to give Jesus what the priests in my church call the hustle, like trying to hide the truth, pretending to be someone we aren't, evading questions, trying to impress with knowledge, trying to get something for nothing. But Jesus persistently yet lovingly called her out of the hustle into reality. He loved her too much to leave her wishing that she had done things differently, hoping that maybe this relationship might be better than the others, wondering what she could have done to keep from having to come in the heat of the day to draw water all by herself. She was likely living in the woulda, coulda, shouldas, not in reality. But God meets us in reality, in real time. Jesus didn't love a someday in the future, got it all together version of that Samaritan woman. He loved her just as she was and invited her to be real with Him, to admit where she really was. As we sang the psalm refrain this morning, just thinking back to that, Jesus actually shepherded her beyond her wants and her fears from death into life. And that's what Jesus wants to do with us. But we have to be real. In our spiritual walk, the right place to meet with God is right where we really are, not in the woulda, coulda, shouldas, because we aren't really there. Almost exactly It was January 4th, 2015, exactly 5 years ago. My family suddenly had to leave Japan because of a family crisis. It was not what I wanted. I had tried to hang on for dear life. I loved living in Japan. I loved my life there. It was 30 years, almost 30 years in Japan. That's home. This is different. It was a shock. I went into an identity crisis. Who was I if I wasn't a missionary in Japan? What in the world could I do in America after having been gone for that long? There was a myriad of woulda, coulda, shoulda questions that I had to deal with. My counselor at one point said, "Nancy, it is what it is." And he said it's not flippant. He said he didn't used to like that way of talking. He said, but it's not like, well, it is what it is. I am who I am. It is what it is. This is your reality. This is what you have to deal with. It's not different. It's not what you thought it would be. You have to live in real time. This is where God will meet you. We all know that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. We can't do anything to clean ourselves up for God to love us any more than the author of love already does. The Samaritan woman finally got it. She finally got it. And the same is true in our everyday lives. We can't clean ourselves up for God to love us any more than the author of love already does. My priest says, remember that God is not in love with a future version of you, with a cleaned up life. He loves you right now as much as he's ever going to love you. And he waits for you in reality, no matter how messy that might be. We're not left on our own to scan the horizon for another glimpse of a whale, maybe leaping up out of the water. No, God is always present and at work, in real time, right where we are. Today, we head back home. We head back home to normal life, to real life. Work, family, reading books, writing papers, crafting projects, and for many of you, the planning and leading of Sunday worship week after week after week. That's reality. That's real time. And that's where God meets us. The Message version of Romans 12:1 says this. So here's what I want you to do. God helping you, take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for him. So as we leave here today, I invite you to not only explore the depths and riches of marking time through dwelling in the story of God through the Christian year, but I encourage you to offer your reality, your real time, your everyday, ordinary life, messy moments as acts of worship, and let God meet you in the present, in that reality, in the real time. Let us pause for a time of silence as we enter into prayer.